We got off the boat at Ascension Island and spent a few hours soaking up the warm sunlight at the USAF's Wide Awake Air Base. It looked a hell of a lot better after the Falklands than it had on the way down. There was even a duty-free shop on the airbase, and I bought a large bottle of vodka before making my way to the aircraft. I'd assumed we would be flown home on some noisy old C-130 Hercules. Everything was happening too fast. We were in pleasant surroundings being served hot food by gorgeous, or at least, female RAF flight crew. The smell of perfume and the sight of real women at close range was hard to take after months of squatties, sheep and shit, I can tell you. We landed at Dakar in Africa to refuel. The local government were touchy about us being there and wouldn't allow us inside the terminal, so we lounged around on the tarmac in scorching heat, while lots of barefooted airport workers eyed us suspiciously. After about an hour, we were back on board and in the air again. The African sun had drained me, so after a few gulps of neat vodka, I fell into a deep intoxicated sleep, to be woken 5 hours or so later by the captain's voice on the tannoy informing us that we were entering British airspace. A massive cheer erupted around the plane, and I started craning my neck to catch a glimpse of land out of the window. I was looking forward, as we all were, to a glorious homecoming. An hour or so later, the aircraft landed and taxied to a halt. We'd made it. We'd been to war and come home alive. I had no idea what to expect when I left the plane. A mixture of alcohol and excitement made me, and many others, unsteady on our feet. We disembarked in order of rank, so I was one of the last to stagger down the stairway, to the stirring tunes of a military band and the waves and smiles of a small crowd of civvies and a gaggle of press. At the bottom of the stairs were several high-ranking officers. In my excitement, I nearly forgot to salute them, and the drunken effort I did make wasn't exactly trooping of the color standard. I was engulfed in a sea of emotion as families embraced, hugging and kissing in an unashamed display of love and relief. But amongst all these people, including the men I'd just fought with, I felt totally alone. Nobody from my family had come to meet me. I wasn't really all that bothered at the time. It's only as I write this, nearly 35 years later, with both my mom and dad dead and gone, that I feel sad that I was alone on that day. Sometimes, I imagine the events in my mind and how I would have liked them to have been. My parents and my sister, my girlfriend and some of my civvy mates are standing on the runway, shouting to me and waving Union flags. Someone has a bottle of champagne and is shaking it up like a Formula One winner. There's ticker tape flying around, and one of the officers comes over and shakes my hand. I wander over and hug and kiss each one of them in turn, a few tears in my eyes. I shake hands with my father, and he says he's proud of me. I have a long, lingering kiss with Carol, and we all go home together to celebrate. Sadly, I don't live in Hollywood. I stood there, alone, in my combat boots and 58 webbing, unsure of what to do next. Nobody was giving me any orders. I was confused. Suddenly, an arm appeared on my shoulder. It was the Lady Mayoress of Lincoln, offering to be my mother for the day. It felt a bit odd, but I had my photo taken with her by the local newspaper, and I would like to thank that lady if she's still alive. She was the ambassador of the entire British people for me with her simple, kind gesture. Eventually, the army restored some order with officers and NCOs striding around and shouting at us gunners. It didn't take long. I'd been back on English soil for 10 minutes, and they had me loading the battery S-kit onto Bedford trucks. After we'd got the kit aboard, we were loaded up ourselves onto white army buses and driven back to our barracks at Curtin in Lindsay. As a reward for winning the war, the army let us have the weekend off. We were supposed to be back at work for first parade, 0800 hours, Monday morning. Home was too far, so I decided to stay in Curtin. My plan was to see Carol and somehow get her back to the block for a leg over. I knew I'd have the room to myself as the other lads had gone home. I was so keen to see her. I went straight up to her house in my combats, still clutching my half-empty bottle of vodka as soon as they let us fall out at Curtin. I arrived at her house and rang the bell. She came to the door, looking rather shocked to see me. I guess I was in a bit of a state. We went to a local pub together. I began drinking heavily and swearing like a trooper. Carol told me people were looking. I said I didn't give a fuck and asked her to come back to the block with me. She refused, saying she was scared of the other soldiers though. Looking back, I was obviously the problem. I told her that we'd be alone, but she wouldn't change her mind. My new post-war personality emerged. I called her a slag and a cow and asked her which civvy had been shagging her while I was in the Falklands. She ran out of the pub in tears. I woke up the next morning, on the floor in the block, covered in puke and blood. I must have busted my nose somehow, or had it busted for me, but I couldn't remember it happening. Slowly, through the fog of the booze and the pounding headache, I remembered what had happened with Carol. I went to phone her to apologize. She told me that she didn't want to see me again, and that I had been acting like a total stranger. Then she put the phone down on me, and I never saw her again. Carol was the first casualty in my own new war. It was a war that at the time I didn't even know I was fighting.